I began my journey into chronicling the censorship industrial complex and its various nodes, really starting in 2016. Free speech diplomacy was a concept that really began in the United States in the 1940s. After World War II, an iron curtain descended over Central and Eastern Europe, and the communist proclivity to crack down on free speech meant it was very difficult to build resistance movements and build up alternatives to communist government. So free speech began to be championed as this democratic ideal by our State Department, starting with the first democratic election in Italy. This was on April 18th, 1948. NSC 1-1, the very first National Security Council memo, was about the U.S.'s strategic position in Italy and the importance of ensuring that the pro-Western candidate who was up for election defeated the pro-Soviet Union candidate. And at the time, that candidate was losing about 60-40 in the early polling in the run-up to that. Our spies, through the Central Intelligence Agency, began to do operations in Italy in order to try to tilt that election. And in the end, the pro-U.S. candidate won. And this was deemed to be such a massive success by the U.S. State Department, by the National Security Council, that they proposed a new doctrine, an inauguration of organized political warfare, to take this Italy model and use it for effectively every country on earth.
The presence of the United States as a leading power in the free world is involved in your work directly.
The U.S. Agency for International Development, which has a very cute play on, linguistically, you see USAID, and so you think it's an aid organization.
The people who are opposed to aid should realize that this is a very powerful source of strength for us. It permits us to exert influence for the maintenance of freedom.
By 1967, USAID was already paying the special forces recruited, CIA-directed hillside guerrillas in Cambodia to pay for their economic construction of their villages. This is a way to join this CIA mercenary group, by the way, is they're getting funded by USAID. But USAID even went a step further and bought 2 airplanes for them in order to transport weapons and narcotics and supplies. I say this, and oftentimes people will laugh, and then they'll be surprised when I keep a relatively straight face, but I always say when it's too dirty for the CIA, you give it to USAID. All covert actions had to be approved in writing by the US president so that you could never have a situation again like in the 1960s and 70s where a president could say, the CIA went rogue, I didn't know about it. That restriction is not on the U.S. Agency for International Development. They can do the exact same thing that the CIA does, but it doesn't need to be approved by the president.
The program used cell phone text messaging to circumvent Cuba's strict internet restrictions. At its peak, it drew in more than 40,000 Cubans. However, its subscribers were completely unaware they were using a U.S. government program and giving American contractors their private data to potentially use for political purposes. Perhaps most shockingly, the Cuban Twitter program was not paid for and run by a spy agency such as the CIA. Instead, it was the brainchild of USAID, the U.S. Agency for International Development, best known for overseeing billions of dollars in U.S. humanitarian aid.
The origins of the National Endowment for Democracy come from the CIA, who pushed Ronald Reagan for this structure because the Reagan White House was not able to had a very ambitious foreign policy. And in 1982, USAID spits back the idea, we'll call it the National Endowment for Democracy.
The National Endowment for Democracy is, just as we've been told, more than bipartisan. It's a genuine partnership of Republicans and Democrats, of labor and business.
These 4 core fours, the IRI, the NDI, the Solidarity Center and CPAY for private enterprise. Ned makes the argument, it used to have all its grants public because, that's how we justify that it's not an intelligence operation. See, we publicly say, what the grants are and to which groups. The problem is making that public and knowing that Ned has such a huge role in toppling governments. And as soon as Ned declares your government a threat to democracy, every group that they're funding in that country under their democracy promotion remit is to overthrow you. Well, the Arab Spring was the product of a concept at the U.S. State Department called digital diplomacy, sometimes called statecraft 2.0.
Today's 21st century statecraft is bringing together technology and the talents of our citizens to influence events in ways that previous generations could never have imagined. I am very proud that the State Department is engaging the public here at home and around the world through Facebook and Twitter, YouTube, and Flickr. So my message is simple. Please, use the communication tools at your disposal to advance the interests and safeguard the future of our nation.
The policy planning staff in about 2006 brought on a young man named Jared Cohen. At the time, he was in his mid-20s. And Jared Cohen is looking around at the sort of older 50, 60s, 40, 50, 60-year-olds on the policy planning staff and says, what are we doing running these operations out of U.S. embassies and consulates and CIA station houses? Everybody we want to recruit is on social media. And social media can be the supercharger of these operations. We can do it at scale. We can do it at speed. We can do it much less expensively. And what happened was the USAID, the National Endowment for Democracy, the U.S. Institute of Peace, and all of the associated Freedom House network groups were training activists all over the Arab Spring to be able to use social media to organize protest activity. USAID massively increased expenditures to be able to fund these activist groups. These were Facebook and Twitter revolutions that were systematically toppling the governments of the Obama State Department's adversaries in the Middle East and North Africa. This was really the high watermark of free speech on the internet. If you ask anyone within the blob structure, they talk about the Arab Spring as if that was like their high school prom moment. They were the valedictorian. They were the homecoming king.
My message to the Tunisian people is I've been following all of you online and watching what you've done, and it's hard for me to imagine anything else that I've witnessed in my life that's more inspiring.
So this network is extremely powerful, and it can pick the rise and fall of presidents. It can destabilize countries.
So an extraordinary night of euphoria in Berlin within hours of East Germany's decision to let its people go by opening the border to the west. The city erupted in a frenzy of celebration.
I mean, really, I don't think that the U.S. would have won the Cold War against the Soviet Union without this. I don't think that there would have been freedom movements that were successful in Poland or Hungary or countless countries around the world without this apparatus. But it became an easy button. It became a way to be able to topple any government you don't like.